Welcome back, folks. Jason Hoppy here to show you how we can create a kind of a paper cut shadow box effect in Illustrator. And so what we're going to do is you're going to start with your layers panel, and also you're going to need your Pathfinder panel as well. And I'm going to draw a rectangle. I'm going to fill it with a light blue. And over in the layers panel, I'm going to take that layer that I've just created, that object on the layer, and I'm going to create a new layer from this. So I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to choose Edit, Paste in Place. I'm just going to paste another copy right on top of itself here. I'm going to open up the layers panel, click on the twirly so we can see. This first layer that I started with, I'm going to lock, and I'm also going to name this my sky, because this is going to be the background. It's going to be in back of everything. This other rectangle that has been copied right on top here, I'm going to take that rectangle and I'm going to select it and go into my color panel, and I'm going to fill it with a dark color. And then I'm going to put another shape on top of this smaller shape. This is going to be the start of my paper build. So I'm going to use circle. I'm just going to fill it with a different color so you can see what we're doing here. Filling this with a different color isn't going to change anything. It's just easier for you to see while we're working. I'm going to take the shape and I'm going to hold down my Option or Alt key, click and drag, and get another shape. Hold down the Shift key and select both of these shapes. Use my Pathfinder tool panel to do the minus front and get rid of that oval that's in front. And then I'm going to take my curvature tool and I'm going to double click on these corners to kind of round these corners out and just kind of move these points a bit to kind of create a little shape here. It's going to be starting out my cutout in this background. With this shape, I'm going to shift click and select the background as well. Back to the Pathfinder panel and choose minus front, which is going to give me a rectangle with that shape that I had just created, with that shape knocked out. And this creates a compound path, and a compound path is when two or more shapes make up what look like a singular shape. So this is basically a compound path rectangle with a shape knocked out. Now I'm going to select that compound path and I'm going to copy this again. I'm going to go into the Edit menu and I'm going to paste that in place again so we get another copy of this. I'm going to go into my original shape that I just created and I'm going to lock that shape. So the only one that's going to be available to move is my copy. Now I want to take just this shape on the inside, so I'm going to grab my lasso tool and I'm going to draw over that shape so I get that all selected. I'm going to jump over to my Move tool, which is the letter V. I'm going to hold down Option or Alt and also Shift, and I'm going to scale this up in size to create a much larger shape. Now it's a little bit hard to see. Let me turn off the lower shape and you can see now I have a compound path that has a larger shape and the smaller shape. And because these squares are both the same color, you can't see them very well. So with my compound path on the upper portion here selected, I'm going to go and I'm going to fill this with a much lighter green color. And that looks about good. And so now you can see that I've got my larger cutout here, my smaller cutout, and then what I call my sky in the background. I'm going to unlock my first compound path by clicking on the lock, and then I'm going to select both of these shapes in the way it's easiest to select without grabbing anything else. I'm going to go to the Layers panel and I'm going to click on the target on the right hand side, shift click on the target on the second compound path, and I'm going to get both of these selected. Go into the Object menu. I'm going to choose Blend, Blend Options. I would like to set this to a certain number of steps, and the steps do not include the first and the last items that we have here. So I'm going to put 4 steps in between my first and my last shape. When I click OK, nothing's going to happen because we need to go back under the Object menu under Blend, and then we need to make that blend happen. And this is how we get our stair step of shapes. Going over to the Layers panel, I'm going to click open the twirly, and you can see that the blend consists of kind of an effect between those two shapes, the smaller and the larger shape. Now let's go over to the Object menu, back under Blend, and we're going to expand that so each one of our objects is now a path in and of itself. Instead of it just being an effect, it is simply broken out now into each step of that compound path, which is great. Let's ungroup this. So I'm going to click on the group and click on the target there so that everything is selected. Object, ungroup, and then I can click off and we're out of the group. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off all the layers that I don't want to begin to edit. And the easiest way to do that is go into your Layers panel, and instead of clicking on each eye here, click once and hold your mouse down or your trackpad, and then just simply drag over all of them, much as I call the poke and swipe. Turns them all off, okay? So now I'm going to select this layer, and I'm going to activate it. And with this, what I'd like to do is I'd like to begin kind of creating my scene. Now, each one of these pieces of paper, if you want to call these, are going to have a little cutout of something in here. So if I'd like to make this kind of a nature scene, what I may want to do is I may want to come in and I may want to put like a little something growing out the side. So with this layer selected, and I'm going to click here, and the reason why I do that is because it now adds that fill color to my fill here, and anything that I draw is going to be that exact same color. And I definitely want it to be the exact same color. So I'm going to create a quick leaf by drawing a circle on that layer, or from that layer, and then I'm going to use my direct selection tool, select the top, and I'm going to move that up just by using my up arrow key, and I'm going to grab just make a little leaf or an egg shape here, and this could be a nice little leaf for one of my shapes. I'm going to hold down my Shift key and I'm going to rotate this, and I'm going to take this, and maybe we have a few leaves coming off here. In fact, I'm going to rotate this by holding down my Shift key and going that way. And I'd like to create a little stem coming out here, and the great way to do a stem is just to take my arc tool, kind of pull that up right there, and in order to get that same color on my stroke right here, I'm simply going to go back into my toolbar, click on my color section, and it's going to put it back in the fill, and I'm going to then click on my double-ended arrow to switch my fill to my stroke, activate that stroke, and beef up the stroke. I'm going to zoom in so we can see this a little bit better, and I've got my little stem coming in here. I'm going to choose my width profile here that tapers to a point. So it is thicker at the bottom, thinner at the top, and I can scale that any way that I want to. And I can take my little leaf here, I can rotate these, I can scale these, and I can park them along this little leaf, this little stem. Hold down the Option key, and Option or Alt click and drag, and I'm going to rotate that shape again so I have another little leaf coming in here. Now I need to take this path and I need to expand this path so it becomes a shape. Select the stem, go under Object, Path, and I'm going to outline the stroke. Now in my Layers panel, you'll see that I have my path and my leaves right here in the Layers panel, and I want to select my path, hold down my Shift key and select my other leaves that are making up this little plant, and I'm going to drag those down so that they appear right above the layer that I'm working on. I'm going to click the target of my first object, hold down the Shift key, and I'm going to then Shift click and select all those other items that I want to combine together into one existing object. Go back to the Pathfinder panel, click on the Unite, and it's going to unite all the shapes. This has to be converted from a path to a shape in order for that unite to work. And then I've got a little plant coming out here. Maybe I want a little bit of cloud or something here. So I'm going to choose my rectangle tool, and I'm going to draw a rectangle on this. It's going to pick up the same color. I'm going to take my direct selection tool, and I'm going to pull my corner widgets in, and I can put a couple lines here, which is kind of a cool way to create, a little bit of clouds in the background. These shapes I want to select in my Layers panel, drag those down to right above the layer I'm working with. activate those points and select all the shapes and then unite them all together in my layers panel. Now I'm going to lock that layer. Next layer I'm going to turn on, and you see I get my next step of my compound path. Here I'd like to take my curvature tool, and I'm going to activate this path by going to that unlocked layer, clicking on the target, and with my curvature tool I'm going to click anywhere on the path to activate this, and I'm going to edit this shape a little bit. So these shapes are not going to be perfectly matching to the shape down below. You can make them larger and smaller, and you can also kind of curve them in or out that you want and move them around and kind of get different looks and shapes on here. Now on this one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little house. And the easiest way to make a house is I'm going to click on this layer to make sure that it picks up the color. And I'm going to bring my fill to the front. And to make a house, I am going to draw a rectangle. And I want to make sure that the rectangle is filled with the same color as my compound path is. And to create this house with my rectangle, I'm going to take my direct selection tool, select the top two corner widgets and pull those in toward the center. Use the Option or Alt key to click twice on the corner widgets to cycle through my different corners. With this, I've created a nice little house looking object, and I can pull this up or down, wider or narrower, and kind of get the style house that I want. I think this needs a little window, so I'm going to take a rectangle tool and I'm going to drag and draw a little window here. And then I'm going to shift click and grab my house. Back to the Pathfinder panel, I'm going to choose the minus front, which is going to knock out that window. I'm going to go back to my layers panel, and I'm going to drag my house back down my layers panel so it sits above the panel or the layer that I'm working with right now. I'm going to target as active. I'm going to shift click and activate this path that I'm on. Back to the Pathfinder, merge those together, and my house is now on that layer. I'm going to lock that layer that I just worked with, select my next layer up above, turn that one on by clicking on the eye, grab my curvature tool, and I'm going to activate that layer. And with that curvature tool, I'm going to click on my path, and I'm going to edit this path to again create kind of a different look and feel as we go. Now this may be a little bit fun too. I think what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go in and I'm going to put a little cloud in here. So I make sure my layer is selective, and that's going to go ahead and give me the color of that layer. And to create a cloud, I'm just going to create a circle. So I'm going to draw a circle, and making sure that it's filled with the same color as the background. There's my circle. And I'm going to Option or Alt click and drag. Option or Alt click and drag again. Option or Alt click and drag again, and again to create several different circles. I'm going to take all these circles, select them in the Layers panel, drag them down so that they sit right on top of the layer it's active. Target that one, shift click and click on all the targets to select all of them. Go to the Pathfinder panel and unite them all together as one shape. And there's my cloud. Now I'm going to go in, and I think I'm going to move this little edge just a little bit more, kind of create a little bit more of a shape in there. I'm going to lock that layer so I can't move it. Go to the next layer up above, turn on the visibility of that. With that layer selected, I'm going to take my curvature tool, and I'm again going to click on that shape, and I'm going to change that shape a little bit more, having a little bit more fun with this. With a curvature tool, I can begin to add points in several different locations. So now what I'd like to do is I'd like to start getting a few more ripples around the edge here, clicking on this shape here to kind of create a little bit more wavy effect. And maybe I bring this down so that I create kind of more of a little look in front of the house or the field here, and just create a little bit more waves as these things go on and make that happen. Okay? So kind of a little bit more fun with these shapes as we go. So with this, I think I could use another little plant of some sort. So with this layer selected, I'm going to use my arc, and I'm going to draw another arc right here. And I'm going to make sure that I take my last used color, put it into the fill, and then swap it over to the stroke here. I'm going to beef up the stroke several points so I get that heavy stroke weight. Go on the width profile, and I'm going to taper that so I get these little points here. And then I'm going to throw in some grass, selecting my path here that I've just created. I'm going to Option or Alt click and drag, and I'm going to resize my grass. Option or Alt click and drag. Option or Alt click and drag, and resize my grass to get some cool little fun grass going in here. Maybe I'll go in and Option or Alt click and drag it over here. Take my bounding box and kind of resize that to create some interesting little grass pieces kind of coming out here and there. Now I'm going to go to my Layers panel, and I'm going to select all of these shapes that I just created, drag them down onto or on top of that layer that I was just working with. Make sure that all of my little grass pieces that I just created are active by shift clicking on all the targets. Under the object menu, go under the path, and we're going to outline the strokes here so that they become shapes. Go back in and shift click on the target for our overall background shape. Back to the Pathfinder, unite those all together. Lock that layer. Now, as I get to this compound path, again, I'm going to turn this on, and I think we need to have a little bit more fun with this. So again, with that compound path selected and active, it's going to put the fill color right here and make it active. Grab the curvature tool, and again, I'm going to have a little bit more fun with this as well, and really start to exaggerate the curves as we go around to create a lot more fun shapes here. And this is one of these ones where I may just kind of shift the little mountain here and pull it down so I may see something going behind there, coming through, changing the shapes just by clicking and pulling and having a little bit of fun. And you can create any type of cool fun shape here that you want, like so. Kind of creates a nice little portal into the background. Don't be shy. Create a lot of fun stuff. Now, I'm going to go back to my rectangle tool again, and I think I'm going to put another few little sections of clouds like I have back here. Draw my rectangle, go back to the direct selection tool, pull on the corner widgets to kind of create these little cloud lines here, and you can adjust those to any size that you want. And I'm going to Option or Alt click and kind of drag those around here. I think putting another cloud in here could be a little bit of fun, so I'm going to grab my ellipse tool, and I'm going to draw more circles here. I draw the circle, Option or Alt click and drag to duplicate the circle, duplicate it again, duplicate it again, and duplicate it again, and again, and again. Go back to my Layers panel, and I'm going to select all those layers that I created, and I'm going to move them down directly on top of the layer that I want to merge together. Select the target that I want to select, hold down the Shift key so I select all these shapes that I have, so I can select the shapes and the layer that I'm on, Pathfinder panel, merge those all together. Go back to the Layers panel, and with this shape, we're going to turn that one on. We're going to lock the one that we just did, and we have our topmost layer. Here, with this one, I want to duplicate this as well, so I'm going to copy, activate this, copy this, choose Edit, Paste in Place, and this one I'm going to turn off because we're going to change the color. So I'm going to poke that in the eye, go back to my layer that we were just working with. Activate that, and here I'm going to, again, kind of resize the shape and really start to accentuate kind of the fun portion of this too to create just an overall shape. Any points that you have here that you are clicking on with your curvature tool can be deleted just by clicking the delete key when you select them, or going in and double clicking to get a sharper point. If it's a sharper point, double click and it gives you a smoother point to create all kinds of fun shapes as you go through. Now, if you'd like to add a little bit of like leaves or stuff growing in here, this would be a great place to do it, where you could go in and you could take a circle, an ellipse, and you could draw an ellipse like this. And if I wanted to make a leaf, go back to the direct selection tool, move the top up here, kind of create this leaf or this egg shape. If you'd like to have the top be pointy, take your curvature tool, double click, and it kind of creates a little pointy leaf right there. And with that pointy leaf, I'm going to bring this over, and I'm just going to begin to park these leaves kind of here, holding down the Option or Alt key, clicking and dragging, scaling the size of these to make it look like it's a little kind of a canopy or a forest here, going through and creating some kind of hanging leaves in here. Again, changing the size so you get large and small, and maybe overlapping them a little bit too if you want to do that. But always rotate, scale, make them a little bit different size if you want, and maybe even flip them over too to create some cool leaf effects. Okay? And you can also come down here if you want, and you can cut certain sections off. Maybe I want to go in and take my curvature tool here and make this flat, so I can, maybe go in and make a flat section here. If I'd like to do something like that, I can double click on those points and pull those handles in and get more of a flat section along here. And then I've got all my little added leaves kind of poking in from the side here. If I'd like to take out more shapes or add something in here, maybe just a little bit more of a cloud, again, take a circle, and I'm going to draw a couple circles here on that layer. Hold down the Option or Alt key, and I'm just going to throw in other little bumps here to make this a cloud. Now, I'm going to select all my shapes that I've created. Again, drag them down so they are directly on top of the shape that I'm working with. And the reason why I do that is if I merge those all together, this shape would then be in front of everything else, and that's not what I want to have. So I always want to get my shapes down on top of the layer that I'm going to merge them with, and then that base layer will stay in the same location. Back to the Pathfinder, merge those all together as one shape. I'm going to lock that as well. Now the last layer is the one that I just duplicated. When I turn that back on, you can see I've got my green as my fill layer, but I'm going to come over to my swatch panel and I'm going to fill this with white. With this active, I'm again going to take my curvature tool and I'm going to click on this overall white shape, and I'm going to make this much bigger, have a little bit of fun with the shape here, and kind of create a totally different picture or totally different window into this world right here. Maybe I double click on that, put a point here, double click on that, and kind of bring that down to mimic that little edge right there. And just have a little bit of fun with the window here to open it up and see that awesome view. Move that over here so we get a little bit more fun. And there's my super cool paper look. Now, with this, I want to go in and I want to be able to now do all of my drop shadow. Now, I want to unlock everything that I have in this file. I don't need to unlock the background. We're going to keep that locked because I'm not going to add a drop shadow to that. And now with everything in here, I want to select all of my layers by clicking on the target and selecting all of my compound layers. Let's go under the Effect menu. We're going to choose Stylize, and we're going to choose Drop Shadow. With this drop shadow, I'm going to set this to multiply, the opacity here. And then I can go in and I can set the amount of offset that I want, which is to the right and down. And in this case, I'm probably going to do about 9. And I got to click, and it has to process this. This is fairly memory intensive. So I'm going to do an offset of 9 points over and 9 points down. And then I can control how much blur I have with the entire content. And then I'm going to click OK. Now you'll notice this puts a blur around the outside edge too, but looking at this, it also creates this super nice blur on the inside, so you get that really cool paper cut effect. With all of this content now and everything selected, I'm going to unlock my sky and I'm going to select everything here. and I'm going to group it together. So Object Group, Command or Control G, put that into a group. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a clipping mask so that I don't see this black border all the way around. So I go in and I draw a rectangle over the top of this. Make sure I have no fill and no stroke in this rectangle, just a blank rectangle. And with the rectangle on top, I go in and I shift click and I target the group. I'm going to go under Object, Clipping Mask, Make. And that's going to take my shape that I drew on top with no fill, no stroke, and it's then going to clip it to the background here. And now I've got this super cool paper cutout effect with all these little bits and pieces and this really cool drop shadow inside that makes it look like you're looking into the depth of what's going on. Now you can always go back in your Layers panel, open up your group, target any one of your compound paths here, add to certain things, take away certain things. But remember, when you do this, there is going to be some processing power that's going to have to happen in order to apply this drop shadow every time you make an edit. And if you did need to do that, go into your Appearance panel, select whatever object that you have, whatever path that you have, and you can edit your drop shadow in the Appearance panel by activating that path and double-clicking on the drop shadow. So there you have it, folks. This is how you do the super cool paper cutout effect in Illustrator.